afternoon, 6B. You thought you could get away from Mr. Zimbelman this afternoon, but oh, you were wrong. Alright, now, starting tomorrow, we're going to be solving equations that have fractions in them. So, for example, an equation like 3/4 x, or 3/4 times x equals 7 1/9, or 3/8 divided by x equals 2 1/5. Now, before we jump into equations that have fractions in them, I want to spend this afternoon reviewing how to solve equations. Up until this point, all we have seen is equations that have whole numbers in it. So, for example, x plus 8 equals 18. Now, I know you can look at this and determine what the answer is without even going through the steps to solve an equation, but I want today to be about refreshing ourselves about those steps to solve equations, because we're really going to need them when we start moving into more complex equations. So, remember, the goal in solving any equation is to do what? Alright, now everybody, what is the goal of any equation? I hope you said to isolate the variable, which is indeed the goal of any equation. We need to isolate the variable, or we need to get this x by itself. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do that by using inverse operations. So, in this example, we have x plus 8 equals 18. Now, what is happening with the x? We are adding 8 to it. Now, the inverse operation to addition is subtraction. So, we need to subtract 8. Now remember, an equation is almost like a balance. What we do to one side, we have to do to the other side to keep it on balance. So if we subtract 8 to one side, we have to do it to the other side. So we are then left with x plus 0 equals 18 minus 8, which is 10. X plus 0 is x. So x equals 10. Now again, we can check our answer by substituting x back in. So we got x equals 10, so we can substitute that in. So 10 plus 8 is 18, so that checks out. Alright, let's take a look at another example for solving equations. Let's take a look at 4x, or 4 times x equals 16. Now again, the goal of any equation is to do what? So we must isolate x here. How are we going to isolate x? Well, first we have to determine what's happening to x. We are multiplying x by 4. So to isolate x when we're multiplying it, we need to do the inverse operation, which is division. So we need to divide each side by 4, leaving us with 1x, because 4 divided by 4 is 1. 1x equals 16 divided by 4 is 4. And we know any number times itself, or excuse me, any number times 1 is going to be that number, so we're left with x equals 4. And again, when we check, we know that when we substitute back in, 4 times 4 is 16. So this checks out as well. Let's do another equation. Let's do x divided by 5 equals 7. So, again, the goal of any equation is to isolate the variable. So here we have x being divided by 5. So the inverse operation of division is multiplication. So we need to multiply each side by 5. When we multiply each side by 5, that successfully isolates our variable. So we have x divided by 1 equals 7 times 5 is 35. And we know x divided by 1, or any number divided by 1, is going to be that number. So we have x equals 35. Now, when we go back up here and check, and we say, well, what is 35 divided by 5? Well, 35 divided by 5 is 7. So this one checks out as well. Let's do one more example. Let's do our fourth operation, or start with our fourth operation that we haven't seen yet. Let's do subtraction. So x minus 5 equals 22. Now again, the goal of any equation is to isolate our variable. So to isolate our variable here, we need to add, because right now 5 is being subtracted from x. So if we add 5, remember what we do to one side, we have to do to the other side. So we add 5, which will leave us with x minus 0 equals 27. We know x minus 0 is going to be x, so x equals 27. Substitute 27, and 27 minus 5 is 22. So this one checks out as well. All right, so that was a quick review on how to solve equations. Remember, the goal is to isolate the variable. We need to isolate the variable by using our inverse operations. What we do to one side of the equation, we have to do to the other side. And once we get our answer, once we have isolated the variable and we've solved for the variable, we need to plug that back in to the original equation and check to make sure our answer is correct. All right, now what I would like you to do, you're going to get a worksheet for solving equations. I would like you to practice solving the equations and use steps. Show your work. All right, have a good day.